Hello, welcome to the Honest Wargamer. We're your host, Rob, for the Age of Sigmar Stats Centre. It is one of the Stream Street shows, but it's its own little thing now, which is brilliant. And I'm joined by online Owen. There he is. Hello,
Hi.
how are you, brother?
I'm very well. Yeah, I'm very good. Nice to see you and talk some more Warhammer. But yeah, I'm pretty good. I think if it wasn't for this show, I don't know what time I'd go to bed on a Sunday night. So yeah, thanks for getting me up.
Is that because you've been battling all around the world?
Few international battles and just a lot of voyeurism in terms of just watching people play. I've been watching loads of games. I think I play one game for every 5 games I watch, I reckon. So yeah, seen a lot of Warhammer again this weekend.
I mean, the math work on that works out. You know, like a lot of people study game tapes. You know, they watch boxing matches, they study, and that's the way you get good. Get good, son. Yeah, exactly. That's what Owen's about. So learn maybe from Owen a little bit. So good. I'm glad about it. I played Warhammer yesterday on TTS with the wonderful Loon King, the Donor Taylor. I was reteaching him how to play, which was, or not how to play the game, but how to use TTS. So that was a fun little experience. I took the 12 pig list, Owen, and it did just as bad as the first 3 times I tried it. But it did kill the Stonehorn. Turn 1. Top of turn 1.
Wow. Straight
in. Dead. Which was really, really fun. But yeah. So I've been doing that. But apart from that, the Stats Centre show today, we got loads of information. In fact, arguably too much. We're a bit swamped, aren't we?
Yeah, I was saying to you, I think that my notes look like that meme of that crazy conspiracy theory dude. So yeah.
You mean Charlie?
Yeah, Charlie, that's the one.
Charlie jobs are what exactly I want my life to be when I'm older. I'm basically...
just so much stuff.
Yeah, not sure. So loads to unpack. So there are 2 events, actual real-life human events, to break through down, which happened over in Oz. We're going to be talking about some stuff that the Spanish kind of events, and we're going to be talking about France as well, and some of those things. You're going to be talking about Butcher's GT, and we're going to be talking about some learned experiences from games recently. So
Indeed.
Loads to do. Twitch chat, what up? Thanks for joining us out here on a Monday. Yes, Meatballs, Razor Wolf, Stu Flynn, Rising Crescendo, The Merchant Prince. Mere Mouse says the juice is loose. That's right.
Always.
You can't stop him. All right, so should we start with our Australian events?
Yeah, why not? Let's go over there. I'm wearing a rather jazzy shirt not in memory because nobody's died, but do you know what I mean? In respect for our Aussies brothers and sisters who get to play, because obviously it's really sunny over there now, isn't it? So I thought I'd bring a little...
Very sunny.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there were some tropical shirts worn during some of these because there were 58 players, I think, over the 2 tournaments. So yeah, there had to be a safari jungle shirt or something in attendance, didn't there?
Well, that would have been the Measured Gaming guys. That's kind of their outfits.
Yes.
And they were in heavy attendance because the event. So 2, there was Battlemaster GT, which happened in Perth. So big shout out to all my Western Australian brothers. They rarely get a shout out. But they deserve it. And then over in Eastern Australia, in Canberra specifically, there was the Everwinter event as well. So, 2 you said you got some stats on quite how far apart they are.
Yeah, I just had a look as a bit of fun because obviously when we talked about the Russian meta, and it was really surprising that the tournament that we covered, I think it was the Ice Hammer GT, that was like 40 hours or something crazy. It drive from Moscow. And then, just in terms of scale, again, if you wanted to drive from Perth, where the Battlemaster GT was, if you wanted to drive to Canberra, again, 40 hours. So anybody who does tournaments in both those locations is proper dedicated. Well, I suppose you could fly, but road trips are always the fun part, right? You did a road trip to CanCon, I think.
Yeah, from Adelaide, which I south up to north. Also, Hawkeye saying congrats to get the geography right, Rob. And honestly, I really appreciate someone just appreciating me learning that. It has taken 3 years, though, and I specifically have a friend, Bradley, who's in Western Australia, who consistently messaged me about Western Australian events, just so I can learn. Also helps I've been to both places. So I've been to Perth. It's very red and hot. And I just hid inside because I'm a white lily English fella. So which one would you like to start with first, Owen? Everwinter or...
Let's go west to east, shall we? Shall we start with the Battlemaster GT?
Yeah, please. Yeah. So it was only 22 people. So, I mean, this is going to happen probably for the next year, maybe longer, right? Ultimately, we're going to end up with smaller events. And so some of this information always you need to take with like a pinch of salt. Like when there's a one-day event, it's super cool that like, let's say a BC Chaos Army wins a one-day event, like, yay. But ultimately, you know, like there's a lot to unpack in some situations. However, still worth talking about always, because it always adds to stuff. So yeah, Battlemaster GT, what happened, Owen?
So there were 22 players across quite a number of grand alliances and factions. Looking at my notes, just in terms of the meta overall, 22 players, 5 games, so a decent, 22 player where you can do a 1 day, but 2 day, you're going to get a clear victor there. In terms of what was there and what wasn't there, it was quite a decent spread. There wasn't any one army that had like 6 people bringing it, but the top army was Lumineth Realm Lords. You had 3 players bringing the light elves, the pointy ears, and then everyone else had either 1 or 2. It's 1 or 2 entries. So Ogre tribes always popular. Seems like ogres and Caradron overlords are really popular in Australia and New Zealand because you had 3 Lumineth and then the armies on 2. We had a couple of ogre players, a couple of KO players, that's Caradron overlords, a couple of Skaven players, and a couple of cities. No Daughters of Cain. As a side note, no Daughters of Cain across either of the tournaments we're going to talk about. I think probably people are waiting to bring the new book. I'd imagine that Broken Realms Marathi wasn't in play this weekend.
No,
just because of the submission. So no Khorne, unfortunately, and again no Legions of Nagash. I mean,
and
Nagash
very few Lumineth as well, right?
No, it was 3 Lumineth in this one, but then I don't think that there were any in the other tournament. Yeah, 1 player in the other tournament.
I think that was going to be one of my points, actually. Big shout out to Ziggy in the chat, Ben Boyd, Moon Tyrannid, Raised Wolf, and thanks to Jog PLC for subscribing. One of the things I was going to say about the event, the Everwinter event, is that it's like a very different meta to what you would expect to see at like an atypical event. Now, I've been covering events since we started Honestly Honest Wargamer, and one of the first things we ever talked about when we did start looking at like events from around the world and comparing them to our like locally, I was like, let's start talking about these Australian events because there was such fun stuff being done by all these wicked and weird players. I don't think that mentality's ever really changed. Sometimes it's felt on the nose, but like the Australian fellas really don't give a shit about what anyone else thinks. And like I could be stood here in England all day being like, look, you need to deal with the Sentinels, and they're like, look, I'm definitely going to take pump map wagons, and I hate you. And it's like fair.
I think it does come down to something like I looked at this, and I think that they're just a fine breed of gamer because across 58 players, there were only 2 Seraphon players. Now that's no criticism of the Seraphon players, but if there was a sort of, if there were people who wanted to win, perhaps more than play the army they love. Then you might see more Seraphon, but only 2 Seraphon and 5 KO across the 2 tournaments. They don't care. They just want to play what they want to play, don't they?
But I was also wondering if like a portion of that, because some of the armies are generally on like not older. That's not what I'm trying to say, but like it's a huge financial like buy-in in Australia, more so than it is here. You generally don't tend to see like I know there's guys with multiple armies, but like the buy-in is higher. It's like 25% higher, and the buy-in's already high. So like you could definitely see why there maybe isn't the diversity of armies in some cases, because the ability to jump around between all those armies maybe isn't quite as prevalent. But like it's just a good conversation. Is it 40% terrorist on models? I thought it was like 25 to 40 basically. So like it's like there's a very interesting conversation about how that meta occurs. And it's also unique. Like, it's a unique conversation. Like, I know the buy-in for Magic is very expensive, and the buy-in for, like, some computer games, I guess, is to a degree expensive, but it's a fairly unique conversation when you're talking about events somewhere else, and you're like, they have to pay 40% more than people in this other location, and you're like, okay, there's gonna be some variance between those two, and I think it's, like, it's a good conversation to have sometimes, that's all. Maybe they shouldn't have been, or their granddad shouldn't have been criminals. It's their own fault.
Wow. We're supposed
No,
to be
not
trying to
all
build,
of
we're
them.
building bridges here, Rob.
Some
We're
of
not
them,
breaking
some
it
of them,
down.
their grandmothers were criminals, so that's fine too. Right. So, what took out the event?
What took out the event was so this is the Battlemaster GT. The top three were I'll just answer very quickly before it gets lost. Is Hawkeye in the chat was asking about the amount of Osyarch Bone Reapers. They are pretty well represented. 3 armies out of the 58 players across the two tournaments. So yeah, there's a bit of OBR sprinkled in there. I think maybe that explains going back to your last point. What explains the prevalence of ogres? I thought it might have been the play style they really like, but perhaps the buy-in is quite low on a more tribes army, especially the Boulder Head or Blood Gullet sort of your Stonehorn heavy lists. You pick up a few, start collecting boxes, and off you go, right?
Yeah, exactly. But again, and I mean that in all honesty, like they as a community, are like. So Russell Moore in the chat just said 2 guys play Seraphon in West Oz, and they put it down because it's a negative play. There's been a huge push, and like people like Clint and Chris Welfare and Coach, and a whole bunch of people over in Australia have worked really hard in developing like a very healthy, and like all the guys in Brisbane and all those guys have worked so hard in creating like a really like good vibe feel at events, which like England definitely never has. Like it's been a lot more cutthroat, you're like walking around with knives. Knives you're pulling out of your back while constantly guarding the front. So there's something to be said there about the lists. I really do think that. Sorry, we've sidetracked.
And I think that's probably reflected in the armies that are being successful. You've got so let's take the Battlemaster GT, so the one in Perth in Western Australia. As I say, Lumineth were the most represented army, but the top 3 in 3rd place was Michael Badder with an Osyarch Bone Reapers army, which was Mortis Praetorians, and then Connor Carey had a Idoneth Deepkin army, obviously kind of what you expect pre Broken Realms, so lots of eels of the 2 flavors, and then in 1st place was Alex Flea, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and he had a Disciples of Tzeentch Host Arcanum list.
Yes,
really great.
This is the hipster build, but still change host, right?
Still a change host. Let me just get my notes up. So yes, it's a change host, but it does have one spicy thing which jumps out straight away and I've never seen in a Tzeentch list. Have you dug into the list or?
No. You said you were doing this one, so
I have done. So if I go through it top to bottom, so obviously Tzeentch, he has Destiny Dice, amazing.
Yep.
The Agendas of Anarchy, again, amazing. Situationally amazing. Fate Point Summoning, and he has his Inherent Locus of Change, which is the -1 to hit bubble from the demons. So just the core allegiance abilities are fantastic. And then building out from there, Host Arcanum, it gives him the Thieves of All Things Arcane ability, which is an automatic unbind in the 1st, 3rd, and 5th battle rounds, which fantastic. And then he has a command ability, Host Arcanum leans heavily into the Screamers, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. You get a free unit of Screamers at the start. But I guess for me, the thing that's really key for Host Arcanum is obviously because you've got a bubble on -1 to hit in melee coming from demons, but you also get the artifact or command trait, one of the 2. You basically get a -1 to hit from shooting as well, bubble, which is huge. And then the pre-game move coming out, your D3 flying units can make a pre-game move, which is like, yes. I mean, you can spec into that, so it's just going to be one big model. Let's say Archeon. Okay, cool, he's moving forward as a pre-game move. That's awesome. Or you can just be like, you can have a bunch of options. So it's just super good.
Yeah, as you say, the command trait, which is on the Lord of Change, is the Spell Hunters, which gives you that D3 pre-game move, and pretty much everything in his list flies apart from the pinks. So he's got a lot of options there. Another good thing that happens is the artifact, the Fanged Circlet, which gives him the 6 Screamers for free at the start of a hero phase, is very much like the Gaunt Summoner on disc. His summon can then move. It's not like a sort of a summon that you get perhaps out of a demon unit where, you know, a normal summon where you can't move in the movement phase. It doesn't specify that. So you've got to, however fast those Screamers move, you know better than me. Rob, is it maybe 16 or 14-inch flying move?
I think it's 14, but it could be 16. I'll double check for you.
It's pretty big move. So the list, so obviously there's a lot of good stuff in there with his free move. Everything's fast. There's a lot of anti-magic and a lot of... So yes, 16-inch flying. So the list in total is we have a Lord of Change. He's the general. He has the Spell Hunter's command trait for the pre-game move. He has the artifact, the Aura of Mutability, which is a bubble of +1 to wound, wholly within 9. He's then got the Law of Change, which is Bolt of Tzeentch. We'll go back to the spells afterwards. Blue Scribes with Fold Reality as his spell. Changeling with Tzeentch's Firestorm. And then a Fate Skimmer Herald on a Burning Chariot. He has the Fanged Circlet for the free Screamers, and he's taking Treason of Tzeentch. And then the rest of the list is 3 Screamers, 3 Screamers, 3 Screamers, and 10 Pinks. And they are all battle line because Screamers are battle line in Host Arcanum. And then his Spice unit is 5 Exalted Flamers of Tzeentch in 1 unit.
Wow.
5. Yeah, I know.
Holy hand grenades, Batman. That is that's nuts. That's a 500-point unit, is it not?
It is indeed. That's a spicy meatball.
that's really, really strong. To be honest, but he hasn't got a Fate Master in the list, right?
No, that's the thing. I was looking. I was like, okay, there's not the re-rolls, but obviously.
Well, so one of the good things, sorry, about like, let me just triple check to make sure I'm right about this, is because you're in Host Arcanum, you don't get the rend on the shooting attacks, which is you get when you're in Eternal Conflagration, right?
Yes.
So that's a one. And also, like, you depending on if you're shooting at the right unit with the Exalted Flamers, you get pluses basically to hit if they're effectively vaulted. You can be hitting on 2s. So if you shoot at the right unit, you could give yourself reroll 1s. So if 2s rerolling 1s. If you're shooting at the right unit, then it's 3s, Rend 1 and D3 damage. So there's like something to be said there, I think, which is nice. Did he have Fold Reality in the list as well?
Oh yeah, he's got Fold Reality, yeah.
Oh, what? That's cool. That's a Billy Baller move though. If you guys don't know, Fold Reality, you cast a spell, you pick a unit, on a 2 to 6, you return that many slain models to the unit. On a 1, the whole unit goes puff. So yeah, kaput. So that's a big dice roll. I get so nervous on those dice rolls. I make other people roll them for me. I'm like, could you roll that, please? It's too stressful.
Hey, come on. I think with Destiny dice and the amount of manipulation and the amount of things that can definitely happen, I think it's really good that that's in there.
Yes.
And I've seen it happen. Clay Franchier in one of his games, I saw him roll the 1, and they all just whoop. See you later.
Yeah, you can Destiny dice that roll, but it does mean that you can get down to only having 1 left. And I mean, having that 1 is still important, but being able to generate 4 back, so effectively 400 points, is a big deal, right?
Yeah. I do respect the fact that he's got it on the Blue Scribes as well. So it's like if he wants to get it off, he just needs to roll 2 2-ups in a row, doesn't he? Because obviously he's got the ability to
so it's never going to happen. That's too hard. I will make this happen on a 2-up and a 2-up. It's like, wow, it's basically not for you. That's cool, though.
Yep. It's got some. And then he also has, of course, Geminids of Ulgish and a Malevolent Maelstrom. So it's 89 wounds. It's really, really low on the wounds. How
many units of Pink Horrors are in there, though? 1,
2. There's only a 10.
Okay, so there's an additional 40 wounds there, that's hidden. But no, I agree with you. It's one of the things I've said about these Tzeentch lists quite often is they're much more of a glass hammer sort of a situation, or not glass hammer, that's the wrong description. But they're very, very fragile, super fragile. And actually, if you look at the Tzeentch book in of itself, its output is fairly good into the mid range, excellent. But it it also kind of struggles when it doesn't have flamers with bodies, but it struggles really. Like it's got hero phase. It does all of the smashing your characters that are like 3 up and have saves with mortal wounds, and then it uses flamers to deal with everything else. But apart from that, the book is very limited. Like it doesn't have survivability generally knocking around inside of its own book, so you have to play it this kind of like razor edge. Like it's it's doing a Paul Walker. You're just driving as fast as you can, like living your best life. All right. Straightforward until the end.
Having watched these sorts of lists play as well, I think there's and this kind of goes, I think, for a lot of demon summoning sort of lists. He's got fast flying units to act as summoning beacons. So even if he's not flaming everything and killing it all, he's got a lot of ways of getting. If you run, say, Blue Scribes, I think Blue Scribes is 16-inch flying move, auto 6er run, that's 22, and then summon Holy Within 12, so that's like 34 inches. So if you're not, because it doesn't, outside of the flamers, it doesn't have insane range. All the spells are sort of like 18 inches, so it loves being in the midboard, and it doesn't have the portal to sort of reach in and snipe out the characters.
Yeah, it's a massive midboard army. Like it really, really struggles. And then even when you put in the portal, you're like you say, you're sniping a thing. You're not like affecting everything at like big range. Like, but Tzeentch Host, I guess, like really does give you that opportunity for doing some teleporting around. But again, like, what are you teleporting? How unsupported are they going to be? Are you facing like the priority roll coming up next? There's like lots to play with. And as much as I think Tzeentch Host is very, very strong, and the results around the world reflect that, I still think there's play inside the Tzeentch Host book. Like you can do it badly as much as you can do it well. So yeah, but if it goes well, oh baby, those 5 flavors, is it 5 exotic flavors? That's insane. That's 30 shots that could be hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s, Ren 1 D3 damage. Just horrific. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. It's and there's a surprising amount of debuffs in it as well. Like if you go Locus of Change, so -1 to hit. And then he gets the Fate Skimmer's Taken Treason, which is the Horde Killer. And if you kill a model, it's -1 to hit. So again, another one. Throw in Geminids. So, if somebody puts 20 Hearthguard Berserkers in front of you that want to fight twice, and you just sort of hold them up with a line of summoned blues, and then get these 3 things off on them, then they're, -3 to hit on the broad axis. That's going to make them unhappy, the little muscle boys. It's cool. I think, again, there's probably a fair amount which is missing here. The Changeling's really nice. The Changeling's ability, I think it's changed from the last, from GHB 2019. But for those that don't know, he can get set up at the end of your first movement phase. He gets sort of picked up off the board and then deployed in your opponent's territory 3 inches away. So we've seen people like little Chris at the finals just put it in range of 2 crawlers on his backfield, and then the crawlers couldn't shoot. So there's and obviously just dropping a little hero in the back and then being able to summon from it as well is quite saucy. So there's lots of bits of tech in there which I don't know the book well enough to pick out, but he's got good mortal wounds at mid range. He's got that. If he gets the D3 and he wants to alpha something, he can send those flamers have a 9-inch move, an 18-inch shot. So that's a 27-inch threat range, so 33-inch threat range turn 1. So if someone makes a mistake and you just go, sweet, I can take out that key unit, then he's got the alpha potential as well. But similarly, he can camp on the midboard and just... I think that unit's ability to just delete a horde is just outrageous. And I think that's the thing to focus on. It's 30 shots that do D3 damage, that's 2s and 3s. So like it's a good horde clearer, which is I think again specifically what the Tzeentch book needs. So very fun. And then what was in second and third? Or is that was that the only, I looked earlier, that was the only 5-0, right?
Yeah, indeed. And I haven't deep dived into the others. I can bring them up and have a quick look. But yeah, the Conor Carey in second with Dom Haim. That was a classic sort of Idneth Deepkin Dom
It
Haim
was, yeah.
list. There we go. Down under pairings. There he
And then
is.
Michael B was it was your classic. It was a Praetorians list. It had
Yeah.
the Mortec. There was a block of 40, and then there had 2 crawlers, and I think Xantos was in the list as well. So
Yeah.
like not that it's not interesting in of itself, but like I would say that you see that often, and it's quite a competent build. Like it really depends on, like, do you want a cheeky 5-man cavalry unit? Are you just going to have more Mortec? Like, what's going on with your list? So there's lots to unpack there, but really you're just fine tuning like the key elements of, like, a slim book, especially when you take out the fact that you probably won't see stalkers, so you probably won't see a Morton Guard, whatever they're called. You won't see any of the like the Morghasts. Morghast, yeah, the Archai, the Harbingers. You won't see either of those normally. So when you do see those, like, oh, that's an interesting point. But normally it's just, Mortec Guard, crawlers, Catacross, Xantos, that sort of stuff is generally what you see.
Yeah. Pretty much. I mean, yeah, you'll have to go really, really well to kill 40 Mortec Guard. I've been seeing more and more harvesters, like a harvester and like, yeah,
and 20 harvester and 20.
Harvester and 20 is the same, I think, as a 40. But I like the extra shooting, and he can fight a bit. I remember watching, it was JP, wasn't it, at Slaughter, when he beat Tony Moore on the top table, or one of the top tables, and yeah,
those fucking catapult shots.
Yeah, it was the catapult shots that softened him up, but then it was if I'm not mistaken, it was the harvester that went in and polished
Duffed
off
him up.
The big man. Yeah, because at that time, obviously with Petrifex, then you can get the extra Rend. So I think he's got like Rend 3 when you put the Petrifex buff on. So yeah, the little and he's got a little shot. I do like the harvester.
He's fun. He's ugly though, awful looking, awful. But yeah, okay, all right. Well, it sounds fun, and also big shout out to Western Australia's lads, because they're all brilliant. So over in Canberra. Jolt Games, Canberra. At Jolt Games. Big shout out to Jolt Games. I've got some of their dice. Lovely fellas. Home to some of my my most favouriteest war gamers. It was a 36-player event. Now, there's like the meta breakdown is it's a lot more destruction heavy. Like, you didn't really see like a huge swing towards some of like the big bads that you normally see. So I do think that is generally going to have affected the result ultimately. However, let's just break it down. So in the 5-0 bracket, because there is a 5-0 bracket. This is not to take anything away from the person in first place, but I just think it's quite interesting. The first time I've done this as well, looking at the 5-0 bracket, then looking at the 4-1 bracket, because it's just a game difference, right? It was FEC and Change Host, but it was won. The event was won by Flesh Eater Courts. And then we'll break that list down in a minute. And then in the 4-1 bracket, there was a big war, which was mixed bone splitters. So there was like 2 blocks of 30 splitters. There was a unit of 6 gore grunters. There was a rogue idol. So very much like I don't know exactly how that would play. Like, it might play different how we've seen, but normally the rogue idol is buffed up, thrown in to pin stuff in. Then you go and hit with stuff, and I can testify that 6 grunters with a war chanter buff, and if they get all the big war points, that will just smash through. I think basically anything. Basically. Yeah.
No, you're right. I faced a rogue idol, and I think that I haven't got the list in front of me, but I think that he's obviously got some of the guys who can dance and do get him buffed up, give him his extra saves, and he's got his inherent 5-up, hasn't he? So he is he kills less than you think, but he can tank like anything. So he is a problem that you can put in your opponent's face quite early and say, deal with this, and then
his threat range is huge as well. It's like, deal with this, or maybe this is coming over to you. So yeah, and also this big war like generating is also awesome as well. Can 6 pigs get through Liberators, though? The answer is no.
So then... coming to that, is that Adam? That's bloody
Yeah,
Adam.
we'll get into that later. There was also an Ogres list by the wonderful Peter Atkinson, a Plastic Crack. You should go read his blog, it's really good. It was a Yulbad, so very classic kind of build that you generally see from more tribes lists. Yulbad, 3 Stonehorns, I think 2 were Frostlords and 1 was a Huskard, but it might have been the other way around. But again, very classic, some Mornfang. Then there was a Nurgle list which had Blight King spam, 55 Blight Kings, I think, was in that list. And then there was a Skaven list with 2 times 40 Plague Monks, Screaming Bell, but then 2 times 20 Acolytes, which I thought was rad. Like I was like, yeah, okay, this is cool. There's a lot of threat. Like it's also like very much like we were saying with Tzeentch, a lot of very fragile threat. Like, there's no saves on either of those units, pretty much. Like, they'll die to a breeze, but the output from either of those, units of 20 Acolytes or Plague Monks, so there were 40 Plague Monks and 40 Acolytes on the board, which would have looked awesome. That would have looked so cool. Screaming Bell, it would have looked very like a ravenous horde, but just horrific amounts of output. So I can definitely see why that went 4-1. But just, so to move on to the FEC list, the Change Host list isn't really much to say when we've already spoken about Change Host list. So there's no disrespect there, though. Well done. Massive congrats on the win. Not the win, second place. Gristlegore list, we'll talk about this. This is Joel's list. When you run in Gristlegore, there's a bunch of stuff to unpack there. The sub-faction for Flesh Eater Courts means that your heroes get exploding 6s on melee attacks, which is quite a big deal, especially when he's got an Abhorrent Arc Regent on... a Ghoul King on Terrorgeist, and then a Ghoul King on Zombie Dragon. So all of those attacks you generate 6s to hit. Now, some of those attacks proc mortal wounds, and the way it works is you proc a bunch of mortal wounds, specifically on the big Maw bite from the Terrorgeist, and then you generate an extra 6, which you then roll to wound on. But it just means you're doing flat 6 mortal wounds, and then you are then rolling at like -2 and doing d6 damage. So it can become crazy volumes of damage. And you get that for being in Gristlegore, which I honestly don't think I knew until today. I was like...
Yeah, it's pretty obnoxious when they're like, okay, well, that's 12 mortal wounds because I rolled 2 6s, and then now I've got 4 dice to roll, and they're -2 d6 damage each as well. Yeah, it's
horrific. It's horrific. And also, Yes Meatballs has just said in the chat, and I think I agree, we do need a new stat. A bit like the 40k T-Whip, but it's how many pigs to kill a unit in one turn. The HMPT... I can't say that. That should be
holy moly. No, is that not the HMPTKTUIOT?
Yeah, that's it. Stat. Yeah. We'll put that in. That'll be fun. Anyway, so also let's just. I think I've blown. Like I've skipped the lead part. FEC won an event, so that's excellent. Like, you know, I feel like the meta was going to be some element towards that. That's not to take anything away from player skill, but there wasn't as much shooting as you would maybe expect to generally see, which you sometimes think is kind of the downfall of the FEC list. However, this FEC list, while not wholly different to like FEC at its height that we saw at things like Six Nations in 2019, you do the core of this has changed. So just to give you a quick recap, one of the key elements that I think that Flesh Eater Courts players were messing around with at the time was that their spell casting was very, very valuable. They needed their spells to go off. Specifically, they needed the 5-up DPR on the general, and they needed to be able to run and charge. Those are kind of the 2 key spells, as well as getting off the Chalice of Ushran. So normally you saw allied in a Corpse Cart, but Joel's done something really, really different here, and I think it's really, really exciting. So he's put... that's Gristlegore. Gristlegore also got a command ability. If you kill something, they can use a command ability to fight on death. They can double that up with obviously their allegiance ability, command ability, which means they can fight twice. So I can like one-shot a Ghoul King on Terrorgeist before he even hits me, and then he can fight me back twice in combat, which is horrific.
You love that, don't you, Rob?
It's just terrible game design.
Terrible
game design is what it is, but it exists, so that's fine. So leaders, he's got an Abhorrent Arc Regent who's got Miasmal Shroud, which, as well as his core spell, which is going to be taken all the time, which gives D3 attacks to a unit. Wholly within 24 as well, Owen. Wholly within 24. That's pretty forgiving as a buff, I'd say. Also heals a flat 3. listen, I've talked about this guy all day.
Are you salty about this list, or are you enjoying?
No. I really like the list because I think Joel's done a really, really good job of like reattacking maybe one of the problems this like the FEC generally has. But I'll never not complain about the fact that a hero heals flat 3 and has 7 wounds, and an ogre's just stood there like, "Am I a joke to you?" You know, a mega boss is like, "What the fuck is going on in this situation?"
Yeah, he's good, that Archregent. I mean, he does cost basically, I think it's 40 points now, because he brings on 200 points of models, doesn't he? But, 40 points.
2 cast wizard, heals flat 3. Yeah, well, so his main spell is obviously the key one, being able to do D3 extra attacks on a unit. We'll talk about that in a minute. But his Miasmal Shroud, which is a cool little spell, basically you roll 5 dice, and you roll 3 dice, any 5 ups cause a mortal wound. However, the big one is if you roll any doubles, they're -1 to hit. If you roll any triples, they're also then -1 to wound, which is quite good because arguably this army isn't overly tanky. Like, it's not super survivable until it starts getting into melee, and then it really, really does smash stuff up.
I think the removing any additional death saves in the GHB has obviously hurt Flesh Eaters, because they used to be able to get it so that he had a 5-up ignore, and then you'd have your death save on top of that. So yeah, it is good to see that this has taken it out. I think you did see at the start of the year, Gristlegore, a load of people went over to France, Hammer and Bolter, and one of the UK players, Ricky Mee, won with Flesh Eaters, and he went with Gristlegore. Very similar list, I think. So it has got game.
I mean, if you can't deal with it, you just can't deal with it. Like,
yeah.
I put 12 Kadai in front of a Gookie or Terrorgeist before, and I'm like, that's 36 wounds with a 5-up ethereal save, and they're like, oh, lol, dead in a turn. You're like, okay, okay. Anyway, so that's the Archregent's key piece, and then you've obviously got the Abhorrent Ghoul King or Royal Terrorgeist, who's like the bastard. He's just indestructible. So he's not indestructible. He'll just kill everything. So his command trait is Savage Strike. So basically, if he charges, it's been changed, which is a good change. If he charges, he obviously gets to fight first before everything else gets to charge, which obviously he then can use the command ability to fight twice. So obviously that's huge. He's got the Law of Madness. Now, the Law of Madness has been taken twice, both on the Ghoul King and on the Terrorgeist. Specifically, this is cast on 6, so it's quite a low casting value. It lets one unit that flies run and charge. Yeah, like, or it lets a unit fly, but that's not an important part. It's the run and charge part that's important. And these guys are base movement 14 inches. So they're moving 14, and then they're running and charging. Obviously, you spend a CP if you wanted to, but this is where it becomes quite important, and I think Joel's done such an amazing job with this list, is think about that. Okay, I cast a spell, sweet, right? Then I've cast the other spell to give me D3, but if I haven't got that off, whatever, then I want to run and charge. So that's going to cost me a CP. Yeah, and then I want to fight twice. That's going to cost me another CP. Then the turn after, they fight me back and they kill me. Well, I'm going to want to fight on death and then fight again. So that's another 2 CP. So that's just 5 CP for those interactions to occur that I want to happen, and I need to generate them. And I think this is what Joel's done really well, because I feel like he's relying on the spells less and he's relying on the CP more, which does feel like the core strength of the list. So then he's got he's obviously both mounts have got the reroll hit rolls on the more attack, so just in case they do miss with the jaw, which does a flat 6 mortal wounds on 6s to hit, then you get to reroll it. We all know about that from the mount trait, and you can take that twice for some reason. Then the Abhorrent Ghoul King on Royal Terrorgeist. He's also got Spectral Host. He's got the Gurish Morshard, which is a terrible artifact. However, brought up a fun bit, Owen. You know when you're making your notes?
Yeah.
So this spell, the spell, whatever it's called, where, not spell, the ability, we all know it, where you roll a dice, and if it rolls above the wounds characteristic of the model that you're playing, whatever ability it is on whichever character, yeah, it's slain. Yeah? Yes. I was trying to write that quick, because I was doing like my show notes. I was like, and I'd like to vote that it's called a pants attack. Because like when you hit on a 6 and it generates 2 hits, yeah. So we just call them exploded 6s. I feel like roll a 6 above a 5 wound model and put it in your pants. It dies. That's what I put it.
I don't know though. I don't think Ghoul King on Terrorgeist wears pants though, does he?
No, he doesn't. But it's more the ability's general name, Pants Attack. It's kind of what I was hoping for, but no one else.
Okay, I might need I might need to think on that one a little bit, but I think it's a good start.
Yeah, okay, no one cares. Workshop that term. Okay. Literally, Twitch chat silent, Owen silent, literally all on my own. Okay, whatever.
Come on, man. We know each other well enough now that I can tell you what I really, really, really think. So
that's fine.
Okay,
all right, fine, whatever. I was just like, I'm going to call it that. So, but now my note says OPB, so once per battle, PA. Once per battle, pant attack. I thought was fun. Anyway, so an Abhorrent Ghoul King or Royal Terrorgeist as well. Now, the Abhorrent Ghoul King or Royal Terrorgeist is quite important because there's a command ability that allows a Flesh Eater Corpse unit to reroll to wound, which is quite important when you talk about the unit of 30 Crypt Ghouls. Because those 30 Crypt Ghouls can actually do some horrific damage. If you added D3 attacks, you would end up with 6 attacks on the unit. You could be re-rolling to wound, and they wound on 4s. They get +1 attack if there's over 20. So, like, you can do a shit ton of attacks out of 30 Crypt Ghouls. And, of course, if you spend a CP, they can fight twice. Yeah, which is just a lot. Now, the cool thing, there's also Crypt Gas Courtier as well. Also got to mention that all of those units can summon some units using some CP, or they can do it near the thing. So there's actually more bodies on the board there. There's like another 20 ghouls or some knights or whatever it is. But there's also the Chalice of Ushran, which is always taken in these lists. Always, because if you kill some stuff, you heal some wounds. Basically, the Terrorgeist go on forever. It's horrific.
It's horrific, yeah. Top tip, Rob, I'm sure you'd agree. Like, as soon as that thing gets on the board, get that thing off the board as quick as you can if you're playing against this.
Sorry, the command abilities on the command abilities on the Zombie Dragon. I was talking about the Zombie Dragon, but I did say Terrorgeist. Sorry,
I know.
I just can't get it out of my head. Fucking Speckles. And then, but the important part here is the battalion, the King's Ghouls battalion, which fuck you never see. Of course. Now, what the battalion? It's 120 points. What the battalion does, it basically you extend out from the Crypt Gas Courtier, which has a Crypt Gas Courtier, 2 units of ghouls, and a unit of Crypt Horrors, which I'm pretty certain are in the list just for the battalion. So that takes you like to 250 points if you consider the Crypt Horrors to be tax, really, to allow this. But it does mean you get a better artifact on your Ghoul King or Terrorgeist, and it does mean you generate another CP, and you're also lower drops as well, which is, like, you're not massively high. Like, you're like, I think it's like 6, but that might be wrong. But you're a low drop ultimately, and I think that's the really, really clever part about Joel's list is he's taken a battalion in there which takes up a bunch of his core, gives him immune to battle shock as well. Like for those guys, even though they're whatever, I think that's important. And then he generates that extra CP, and then he's also sport CP as well. So he starts off like turn 1 with 3 CP, which is pretty huge.
Yeah, and I think the King's Ghouls giving him that ability, what's it called? Guardians of the Court. If he's not having to spend because Battle Shock immunity, when you then factor that in or link that in with the muster ability. So again, in the start of his hero phase, he can roll a shit ton of dice per courtier, and every 2-up brings a ghoul back. So he doesn't want that unit to flee, much like an Osyarch Bone Reapers unit of Mortek. Once they're gone, and you can't regen back into them. So obviously that's really strong. But then similarly, if he's not spending the CP on the battle shock tests, much like the earlier point you were making, he's using that CP to double activate. He's not. It's a bit like I run a Demon Prince with his command ability in my Khorne list, and I put the Crimson Crown on him, and then every turn I don't have to spend a CP on that ability, and it means that Archaon can pile in an attack twice. So he's able to use his resources in a most devastating manner rather than having to shore things up and use them almost like, regressively rather than progressively.
I also think it's smarter, Joel. Like, I don't know if Joel's just been playing it this way for a long time or he's re-come to this list recently, but with all of the magic dominance that you necessarily see from some of the armies out there, he doesn't have to play into the game. Obviously, the D3 extra attacks is good. Obviously, Spectral Steed is good. Like, those are spells he wants to get off. But ultimately, you're still sitting on that core, I strike twice, I fight on death, and I've got the CP to back up that. And I think that's important, right? And I think excellent, and well done on going 5-0, and also well done on kind of like reskinning this cat, because I think it's sweet. Still, that fight twice on death, What a great interaction for new players to deal with. Yeah. Well, they must be like, what?
Archeon does it as well, you know. Archeon does it, which is fun.
He does, but he doesn't look like some fucking sprues that someone's just found in a bin.
Don't be nasty about Speckle's hobby, for God's sake, Ron.
No, his looks good. His looks good. Anyway, no, I'm sure Joel's looks good as well. I don't know what Joel's looks like. Right, so yeah, that's basically it. It's not that I'm not going into 2s and 3s, but I was wondering what you think about 5-0 bracket and then a 4-1 bracket, because I know that there are secondaries sometimes in effect, and that can change the points around a little bit, and that's not meant to be disrespectful to anyone at all. What it's meant to be is like, you know, the 5-0 bracket and the 4-1 bracket being different, I think, like is quite nice passing out in some ways. So yeah, that's basically.
I think that's fair. I think what you can do then is you can give props to people who are at the top of each of their brackets, because the differentiation between mid bracket and top bracket is how well they've then played those secondaries, and I do think that needs to be respected, and sort of we need to put a pin in that, just because. Okay, especially when you think about team tournaments and stuff like that, then those are the things which elevate a 4th place to a 3rd place for your whole team, is those secondaries. So if we can, I agree though. I agree. Looking at the 5-0s is that's very much a clear bracket, rather than it being, you know, perhaps overturned by a lot of secondaries or something.
I agreed. But it also means that like there's more credence given to everyone in that 4-1 bracket. You know, like that Skaven list was in there, Nurgle list was in there, Big War, the Ogres were in there as well. And then, of course, FEC and Chain Shows. Obviously, FEC took out the event, Chain Shows came second. But, like, so just make sure I put that in there. But Chain Shows also in there, another 5-0. Like, always valuable. LLV would always tell me, look, those 5-0s are super valuable. You should always keep track of them as well. Because they're also the sleeper agents in kind of the stats, generally. Because you're looking at, like, oh, what won? It's like, okay, well, this one, but this list still also went 5-0. Like, you know, this list again went 5-0. So there's a lot to be said for that, I think, in some cases. But yeah, and it looked like it was a great event. There were loads of pictures online. Jolt Game's super cool. Canberra's super cool. Great bunch of blokes. So it looks like it was a fun time had by all, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm just jealous, really. Aren't you jealous?
Oh my God, so jealous. So jealous. It's all like I can't get over it at the minute, if I'm honest.
But we've got TTS to keep us going, haven't we, in the
meantime? We do. So we're now going to talk about 2 different things. A little new project for the Age of Sigmar Stats Centre with Owen and Rob. And then we're going to be talking about TTS event at the weekend and us doing some coverage. So really exciting times and news. So first thing is that I've been contacted by some guys over in Spain and France, all of the places, which is super nice. So I want to say a big shout out to, now, first off, we all know that obviously I'm an idiot. Buckle up, babies. So every word I'm about to say that isn't English, I apologise for profusely. Let's just... just watching too much for Only Fools and Horses. Fucking Bonjoro.
Please stop.
Anyway, so we've been contacted by the guys over in Spain about their tournament scene and what's going on there, which is super cool, and I really, really appreciate them for reaching out. And it kind of has led on to a conversation for me and Owen where I've actually done it now, so I'm going to just drop it in the chat. I've set up a Discord server for people for people to tell us tournament results from around the world, but also so we can start having like in-depth conversations about like what your scene's like. Because Owen, you were talking about Russia the other week, right? And what's going on there, and it sounded super cool. And until you'd had that conversation with me, I really didn't know very much. Do you want to remind us what that was about?
Yeah, just talking about the Ice Hammer GT tournament and how, just in terms of, you know, obviously. As both you and I are based in the UK, if somebody talked about the UK scene as a sort of a catch-all, you'd be a bit like, oh well, there's a very much a Scottish scene like the Northern Invasion guys, and then you've got like a scene in Liverpool with the Just Play guys, and then there's like South London Legion and Bad Moon Cafe kind of, and London Wargaming Guild down in London. So like everywhere's got its own flavour and its own sort of group of players. So you'd kind of feel a little bit like, oh right, well, you know, I'm not represented by talking about it as a whole. So just in terms of talking about the Russian tournament, then Russia's a massive country, and there will be different tournaments going on in different areas, and like beginning to understand what the sort of the 5 big tournaments are. And again, looking at the Australian tournaments from the weekend, they were in diametrically opposite areas of Australia, and they had different meta and different winners. So I just think it'd be really interesting to find a little bit more about, as you say, you've got information about the Spanish scene, but I'm sure, like, you were talking to, I'm terrible with names, the gentleman who does the Red Harvest, the Canadian meta. I'm sure that the Canadian meta and the guys from Season of War, when we find out about what goes off in Texas, like the Texas meta, like, and general AOS scene is phenomenal. Like, there's so much going on there. And getting that breakdown. So being able to host that all in one place is kind of the idea eventually. So we've created a Discord server, and I'll include it in the show notes. I've included it in the Twitch chat as well now. But if you want to join, and if you're listening from somewhere around the world and you want to try to explain to us what happens in your kind of like world view of your general meta / area, like what are all the events in Sweden and why? Like when I was in Sweden, I was at Krigslantan, and they're like, I should come up to Ume, and I was like, yeah, cool, I'll come there. And then all the fucking Swedish people took me to the side, like, don't go there, it's fucking so far north, like, fucking leave it. And I was like, really? Like, how far north is it? And I looked, I was like, holy shit. They were like, yeah, we'd rather come to England than north. I was like, wow. So like, there's loads to unpack, and I want to hear about Germany, France, like, all the different places, the US. Like, the US is just the US to me, but like, obviously the state is massive. So if you join in, and if you are someone who knows what's going on in your country or your area, do get in touch. And if you haven't found the link, message me on Twitter or something, and then we'll break it down. And then, because eventually I'd like to do interviews and kind of like put some pins on maps. I think that would be really fun for people. Also, if you're traveling, like you want to do like a Warhammer Abroad sort of like adventure whenever that can occur again. I think this would be a fun time. So anyway, so the guys, I've got a little image for everyone. Thank you very much. So this is from Juanma, maybe. That was pretty damn good for you, Rob. I would go with that. Don't back.
Thank you.
No.
It kind of looks like Jamma, but whatever. From DKHM Spanish AOS channel. Now there is a YouTube video which I will include in the show notes, but again, it's all in Spanish, so I didn't get it. We have done some stats for the Spanish meta, which are here on the board, and we're just going to talk through them a little bit, because I think that's it's just a really nice thing that they did to show us what's going on. So these are their stats, and again, I don't see Spanish, so I'm going to make sure I get this right. But it doesn't look like there are like massive numbers to work from. But as you can see, some of the armies that are doing really well there, without them being an aberrant stat, like the Sons of Behemoth and the Bone Splitter stat are in there. They seem a bit aberrant. The armies that are doing well are Nurgle, Bone Reapers, Seraphon aren't doing quite as well as you would expect them to, and Kharadron Overlords as well are doing pretty well there, and there's some of the armies that are most represented. But the meta one is the one that's always really interesting to me. And in Spain, it looks like Kharadron Overlords are the most popular army currently, which is fun. As an Englishman, the idea of a bunch of Spanish fellas in a boat is scary. Yeah.
It's supposed to be building bridge.
That's a bridge. That's a historical reference point for both of our two countries. That's a great time.
Do continue. I'm sorry. I'm gonna keep mining that though.
Thank you so much. And anyway, and then Seraphon just pipped for being one of the most popular armies in there. But Stormcast Eternals, actually are the most popular. So 10% of the meta, which always makes sense. I feel like Stormcast. I mean, but look at their win rate though, Owen. 37%.
Yeah. If it ain't shooting, in the hero phase and in the regular phase, or putting, what we're going to talk about later, putting 60 Liberators on the board, kind of your sort of mixed arms Stormcast army is they do struggle. Yeah.
There's like Lumineth are in there, not as popular, but they've still posted some pretty decent results as well. I am fascinated by the Nurgle lists doing really, really well. Ultimately, but again, that's why some of these raw numbers I would like some interpretation. So hopefully I'm going to get to talk to these guys and we'll have like a longer chat. This is more kind of like they've sent me this message and I'm like, do you know what, let's do this a lot. This sounds like a really good idea, and we'll break it down. Is there anything in there that jumps out at you, Owen? It's okay if not, because sometimes it's all the numbers.
I'm quite I'm quite impressed by the Bone Reapers. We've got 67%. Yeah, that's 67% win rate. If I'm interpreting that correctly, the first column is the percentage of victory, and the second column is the percentage. I suppose it's not a huge amount of the meta, because it's that thing again. This is LLV's territory, really, isn't it? But the more people that take something, then the more chance there is of it being pulled down. And you can see that with Stormcast, right? They're the most represented, but they've got quite a low. And then conversely, Bone Reapers 67%, but they're only about 6% of the meta. But yeah, I'd be intrigued to see. There we go. Victories. Yeah, we're basically both showing that we don't really know much Spanish here, aren't we?
Yeah, no, those are the case. Those are the case. And again, I'll include these images in the show notes for people who listen to the podcast. Big love to you guys, by the way. Yeah. But meta percentage is always something that's important to me, because it shows you armies that are viable and current and have been built, and 10% Stormcast makes sense, they're a starter army, you get them out there. However, the Seraphon and KO being the two other most popular, with Slaves to Darkness being nearly the same, does make you think, okay, there's a lot of other armies knocking around there, which I think is interesting. And, you wonder how much those KO and Seraphon builds are bringing down other armies' win rates as well. And maybe Nurgle is just the answer. You've been talking about this a lot. You were saying that the answer to shooting is a bunch of Nurgle units. And maybe that's why their win rate is where it is, ultimately. So loads. The interesting stat, which we've got here, big shout out to the boys for doing this again as well, is the comparison between Spain and the rest of the world, which I think is interesting. Obviously, that Sons of Behemoth stat is an aberrant stat, because there's been no other events really with them. And Legion of Asgore one makes me super sad. The rest of the world, there are some, but there are none here. But the kind of takeaway points, I think, interestingly, is there isn't as much Legion of Chaos Ascendant in Spain as there is around the west of the world. And there also is nowhere near as much Ideneth in Spain as there is around the rest of the world. About half, which is, I think, really fascinating. However, Bone Splitters are twice as popular in Spain. So I don't know what to I'd like to make some sort of cultural joke there about fish or but I've got none in.
I mean, it's really interesting that the Nurgle are almost twice as popular in Spain rather than internationally, and maybe that's just a tiny little. No, I'm not even going to say that. That's a terrible joke. Just
what to look at?
Make a Spanish flu joke, but
Owen!
It might have been a bit on the nose with coronavirus.
And stuff, God!
Backed out there.
Also, Big War. Big War, nowhere near as popular. But Bone Splitters is quite popular, which I think that's fascinating. Doing this kind of breakdown of the local meta versus the kind of international meta, and it's really fun. And I got to say, big thank you.
These guys should do maybe do a show where they talk, because they've got a lot of information here. They could do a show, couldn't they, where they sort of talk about their meta versus the international meta.
They've done one. It's on YouTube. It's in
really?
Spanish. Yeah, it's in Spanish.
Ah, okay, nice. Maybe we should. Their English is better than our Spanish, so maybe they could be a guest. I don't know.
They should do it. Yeah. I'll ask them on the show. That's what I'll do. So I like the Spanish meta, says Prop Joe. In Germany, it seems to be dwarves, elves, and more dwarves. So yeah, that's cool. And then also, big shout out to Marcus, who sent me a message. This is about France as well. So over in France, so there's no images for this anymore. So that's in Spain. And again, I'm going to try and get the guys on the show to have a long chat about it. Marcus was telling me about what's going on in France at the minute, because they're under a bunch of lockdown as well. And so they've started doing a bunch of TTS leagues also, Owen, but they've started to put people into group stages instead of just your classic day event. They've put them in group stages where they're playing over time and leading into kind of finals. Yeah. Which is quite cool, right? Obviously, I think really only possible because of the online nature. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think it's really viable format. I do think that with the one dayers that I put on, they do sort of miss out people that perhaps have demanding jobs or kids or both, or just the timings don't work out. It's quite hard to sit in front of your computer for sort of 10 hours. So having this this format's great in terms of people can play their game over a week or whatever, and then it all builds up, and it's really nice having that narrative every week, seeing who's winning, seeing who's rising up the charts and what have you, and then you end up with this sort of top bracket. And then probably what will happen with it being on TTS is, say, the top 8 players play in like a final, and then it's really nice. All the other players will probably be watching and sort of cheering on their mates or looking out for somebody that beat them earlier in the tournament and things like that. So, TTS is great in terms of that kind of format, and being able to play during lockdown is a bit of a godsend, right?
It's beautiful. It's beautiful because it also means you get to meet people from all around the world, which I know like you've been doing. And a bunch of the other guys doing, and I think it's in some ways, while not like maybe locally made us closer, it's made us internationally closer, which I think is a genuinely positive thing. Like I think that's honestly cool. Well, which leads us nicely, as if we planned it, into what you've got to talk about today. I think. Am I right?
Yeah, I've got just a quick overview on where we're at with the Butcher's Buffet tournament. I think if people have been watching regularly, then we've been sort of having an eye on that. And obviously I've been playing in it, and so I'm quite invested. This is what's been watching games and playing games in this tournament has been what's made me online Owen for going deep into the matrix. Have you ever seen that movie Videodrome, Rob?
Yes, I have. Love it.
Yeah, I feel like I might have like a little USB port and like a little Thunderbolt port might start coming in my stomach, and because I'm watching so much.
Of course, you'd have a Thunderbolt port, fancy Londoner.
So I can plug
the rest of us out here with USB 2.0. They've got
I do feel I'm going deep into that Cronenberg nightmarish vision of there might be some, maybe next week we might have some like amazing gribbly special effects. I might turn into a giant fly or something.
That's one of the things. That's one of the things I have. I'm more Johnny mnemonic. Whenever like I have to do an event or like we're doing some like coverage, I'm like, okay, learn 2 lists intimately before they play each other, and I'm like, right, I know everything. And then afterwards, you'd be like, what are those 2 lists? I'm like, I don't even know what the armies were. Like it's just programmed for a little bit, and then it's completely just all short-term memory. Then it's ruined. Just different approaches.
I've been staying up late because obviously, again, talking about the international nature of the tournament, there are people like you've got always trying to engage with people and get them, get the timings to work out. So I woke up on Sunday morning and people were playing, and I went to bed last night and people were playing, and often they're streaming their games to watch. So I just thought, I don't know if you've got the PDF.
It's already up, babe.
Okay, I'll stop rambling. So as of last, I think it's basically the cutoff point every week is Thursdays. So on Thursday of last week, this is Pask's Butcher's Buffet tournament. So 6 games. 52 players, so it's a decent spread. So the first page we've got up is where the tournament stood when everyone had finished their round 4 games. So we've talked about several of these lists actually through the course of the weeks, and there are some names that viewers may recognize. So looking at it, there are only, again, using our new way of assessing, there are only 3 4-0s at that point. So Pietari, Finnish player with a Seraphon list. It's the 15 Saurus Knights and the 12 Pterodons in Kotal's Claw. He's a 4-0. Cole Skaven list, which again we've talked about with the sort of Swiss Army Skaven build, where you've got the Vermin Lord and you've got a plague priest on his furnace with the 40 monks and the 20 storm vermin and then the 6 storm fiends, like a really nice mixed list. And then AZ, German player, I think he's a German player from his accent, and he's playing the 1-drop triple battalion shootcast, the stormcast list.
With a triple battalion, with the 3x3 long strikes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was where we were at going into round 5. So round 5 has been played. So if we jump to the next page of the PDF.
I will do. I just wanted to thank Yes Meat Balls for subscribing with a tier 1 subscription, and Scrivo's joke saying it's nice to see people in tier 1. Made me laugh. Good job, Scrivs. Next page, we're on.
So very much like a football table where you've got your going, players and tournament, players and armies going up and down. This is where we're at now. I will caveat this with the fact that there are several players outside the top 10 who haven't played their games yet, so they have the opportunity to jump into this top 10. But looking at what we've got left, I watched Pete's game, Pietari's Seraphon. He drew the one drop shoot cast, and it was pretty brutal. That one drop the coalesced Seraphon list just completely hard counters because it basically
-1 damage.
Yeah, -1 damage. Just it was really tough. Like AZ had the choice of turn, and he felt that he needed to take turn 1 and try and do as much damage as possible. He wanted to battle shock off quite a few of the knights or the pterodons if he gave him the opportunity, but he just didn't do enough. And then Pete basically over a double turn from 1 to 2 just took his whole army off. It was pretty savage. Pete rocks on with this 5-0, so he's the guy to beat. And then other wins, you had Mikhail, who I've played both Mikhail and Pete in this tournament. So another Seraphon, very different Seraphon build. This has all the teleporting and the summoning. So it's a Starborn Fangs of Sotek list. So 40 skinks, 20 camo skinks, 2 priests, 2 star priests, and Kroak basically, and they all win.
It's fascinating. I was going to ask you a question about like how you think that they could be like redressed or at least rebalanced a little bit in a moment. So I say thank you to Golgatha, Born Again Manchild, and Yes Meatballs all for subscribing. Yes Meatball says, "God damn, I've been shitposting for so long." I appreciate that, and then thank you to MJ Pegasus for donating a gift subscription and getting us on the hype train, and then Scrivo for donating another one to old mate Cobb. Who's just joined us live, so we're still on the hype train. That's fucking nice. Thanks, buddies.
Two.
Ashball, the comparative between Spanish and the rest of the world was in terms of win rate. Fucking, we messed that up. That's my fault. I'm just gonna interview you guys, and then it'll be fine. We'll know more. Sorry, I was gonna say, like with the Spanish stuff, with the Seraphon stuff. What do you think could be done to redress the balance a little bit? They're like, whenever we see these builds, there's always a key component. There's always normally a Kroak in there, but they're in Kotl's Claw, or they're in Fangs of Sotek, or they're in Thunder Lizard, and they're all also always doing well. Like, do you think it's a general points increase? Like, what do you think?
I don't want to be a doom merchant, and I am sick of not sick. I had chances against both these players when I played them both. And it's just so oppressive. I think people say the argument with Kroak, because Kroak is the fulcrum. He's the sort of center of the sphere of influence, as you've called it. I love that, by the way. He's the center, and the argument is, okay, he needs a Balewind and he needs an Astrolith Bearer to extend that range to 12. Mm-hmm. So he is already, let's say, 500 points. But I just think he can be played around and you do still have to play him well, but what he does to the game is just, when you look at 320 points, like, he is up there as god tier in terms of his influence on the game. He sat at the back of the board against Noah's Maggotkin of Nurgle in the previous round, and he just killed a Great Unclean One from 4 wounds to dead with range from the Realm Shaper and from Kroak. Flat 3 mortal wounds against demons. Even with the 5 up, he just chewed through. Yeah. And if there's something that can do that, and his general, so the opponent's general can be killed by Kroak from that distance, I think there has to be there's a problem there, right? But then it goes deep. So you say, okay, Kroak 500 points. That's often heard, and I don't think that would be out of the question, to be honest with you. But
me either.
It's the restriction-free teleport that will win people missions, especially if they're playing, obviously if they're playing Starborn. The fact that you can summon a unit with a resource that's always coming back up, and Kroak is turbocharging that summoning, is the fact that you can just go, okay, 10 skinks and then put them on the opposite side of the board. I just think that's where the feels bad comes from, because it almost feels like you're hustling and screening and trying to zone off the board and do as much as you can to impose your game on the opponent. And then he's just going, okay, here's my 10 free skinks, and they're going to go there, and then this is going to go there. And do you know what I mean? There's a lot that happens without dice. And I don't want to come across from a point of salt, but there is a lot that happens without dice. You know, poison, mortal wounds on 6s. So straight away, you've got a block of 40 skinks who are already super cheap, and they've got 80 shots doing mortals on 6s to wound, and you can give them +1. You can give them rerolls because you've got loads of CP. So it's the whole package, and I don't really see how points fixes that.
I agree with you. But I think it's a conversation like we had once with Daughters of Cain, where one of the things that you could do is just bring the points up. So right now they have all of the tools, but if you bring the points up enough, then like for instance we talk about a Kroak, like what did we just say then? 180 point increase. That does mean that you lose 30 skinks. Or you use your you lose your 2 units of like single salamanders or whatever the situation. You lose a bit. And I think sometimes that's where points I agree with you. Like the necessary effective. Some of those abilities just shouldn't be in. But that was my same feeling sometimes with the Flesh Eater Course conversation. Ultimately, they're there, and I very much think Games Workshop will do very little about that. But what can they do with points? I think just a general bump might bring them down. They might bring them down from where they are, which would be good. A general bump. If they had to lose 200 points out of each list, how would that look? I mean, obviously Darren at the Super Series round 1, 500 points down because he had Gotrek in there and still did fight. But I still think there's a really healthy conversation that points might just be able to bump that up enough, with the outlier of Kroak just being just slap him with a 500 point price tag, for the experience of playing against him, which I think seems really fair. All right, so also thank you to Ashbol, who subscribed for the first time. That's also nice. Loads of new dudes in the chat. Let's go, new dudes. Is there much more to say about this Butcher's Buffet?
Yeah, just in terms of the results that have come in, and looking at that top 10. So Noah, he dusted himself off after being beaten by Seraphon by Pete, and he got a win. He beat the Bone Reapers Mortis Praetorians list with his Blight Kings. We were all playing yours and mine. We were playing Scorched Earth. So yeah, just for context, Matthew Goldsborough, obviously he's been on the show and regularly plays in any Warhammer tournament he can get his hands on. He beat Seraphon in the last round with his Lumineth. Chris Hernandez again came back from a loss in round 4, and he, with his Calibron, he beat a Soul Blight list that was doing quite well. AZ drops down a touch with his loss against Pete. Cole Wright is yet to play, so if he wins, he's got a Lumineth matchup this round. If he wins, he's going to be the only other 5-0, and they'll be duking it out, Skaven versus Seraphon for the win for the whole tournament. Ash McEwen with his Sons of Behemat, he also beat Seraphon to be 4-1. I beat some Fire Slayers 3-2, and then Stephen follows. Again, with that brilliant Thricefold list, the 3 fatties.
Still got Be'lakor in.
With Be'lakor and the Beasts, yeah. He's putting in the work with that, and I don't have it in my notes, but yeah, he got a win as well. To be on 3-2. So that's it.
Okay, all right. Well, that's excellent. Which leads us quite nicely into this weekend. Big news.
Oh, is it this weekend? It is this weekend, isn't it?
It's this weekend, baby. Because on the last day before Christmas, all through the house, I had a poem earlier, but I forgot it like a mouse. But it's Christmas starts tomorrow, which... Christmas Rob, by the way, is a whole different type of Rob. There's jam everywhere. I'm going to go wild. It's my most favourite time of the year. I'm very, very excited about a bit of Christmas. But on Sunday, there's a Hammer Time event. I am correct in saying that, Owen? Yeah, is that right?
Yeah, that is correct. Hammer Time 6 on Sunday the 6th. So I doing it on a Sunday for a change. I took a bit of feedback from some peeps, and they sort of, you got your people that work in shops on Saturdays and stuff. So and people who just have to work Saturdays. So, and also changed the start time from early morning to midday. So it's going to be midday till 10 p.m. this Sunday. So that's got a lot of the certainly the guys on the east coast of America. That means that they don't have to get up stupid early. So there should be quite a lot of different players, new players. Quite a few guys from the Butchers tournament have signed up, and yeah, we're at 43 players at the moment, Rob.
And we're looking to get 50 players. And
Oh,
if it
great.
makes you, and if it encourages you to sign up to a TTS tournament or play in one, if you are listening to the show, it's super friendly, super fun. You should definitely do it. It will be live streamed by the Honest Wargamer this weekend with many a guest commentator. I've heard Nathan Prescott has offered to commentate a game. Dan unsupervised, James, me, Owen might be doing a game. There's a guest. I am actually working on producing a slew of guests. So we, which is quite easy to organise. Where you just like, do you want to sit home in your pants and talk about games 3 hours? They're like, yeah, fuck yeah. So
It's not a huge buy-in, really, is it?
So that'll be Sunday. So that'll be all Sunday starting midday. We'll be doing the coverage. Very excited. Very much looking forward to that. I've enjoyed it. It's obviously nowhere near as fun for me as when we do live coverage from like actual people. Like there's that energy, and I get a little bit like I'm just in a room like, oh okay, it's like this is fun. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm very much looking forward to it. Owen, thanks for letting us jump in on it and do it. It's going to be super fun. So it'll be a veritable smorgasbord of guests. I might even ask Schmorgs to do it. So yeah, that's the weekend. This Sunday, so tune in.
I'm just going to put a link to the Tabletop TO and the Discord. So if anyone does want to join the Discord just for some casual games or competitive practice, and if they would like to sign up for the tournament, it's just classic 2,000 points, 3 games, and we are going to be playing Broken Realms Marathi. So there should be lots of interesting new lists and stuff to talk about. So
will there, Owen? This is where I go get an image. What sort of things do you think we'll see?
Well, you and I have both experienced this, and Darren J. Watson has got a lot to answer for.
Darren goddamn J. Watson.
Yeah, the list. He's birthed something, and he's given it to the Warhammer terrorist himself to go off and test.
I'm the Warhammer terrorist. He's the Warhammer freedom fighter.
See,
which honestly, I don't think is the right way. I don't think it's the right way around, but whatever. Like, I'm just going to go with it.
So yeah, just a bit of fun. Well, that was a beautiful segue, by the way, Rob. We're really hitting our stride here, aren't we?
Oh, yeah, we're really doing really well.
So it's funny talking about Marathi Broken Realms. I played 4 games over the weekend, and 3 of them were against the new armies from the new book. So I'm in a reasonably well-informed position to have a chat about some of the things. So Marathi's really good. New Ideneth are going to be nasty. And I think it's a great book, but we're going to just have a little talk about the Stormkeep Patrol. I don't know if you've got that picture up on the screen, Rob.
It's already on the screen, sir.
So I just there were 2 talking points here, really. I don't want to bollock on about my games or anything too much, but I played Khorne as usual. I'm playing an impact list, but I just because some people dropped into the game and were like, what, where are you in the game? What's going on? This is Adam had the choice of priority, and this is him giving me turn 1. That's what starting my turn 1 looks like.
Mm-hmm. So you can see on the board there, and if you guys need some like sort of description for what's happening, Podcast Bros, I'll explain to you what's happening in a minute. You are playing
Force in hand.
Yeah, Force in the hand. So that's what's happening right now, and you kind of deployed lengthways. Owen looks like he has a bunch of his crushers at the back of the board, almost on the very back line, with a screen of dudes in the middle, and then in front of him, and again, his first turn before anyone's had a go, there is 2 units of 30 Liberators completely blocking in almost all of his force, like completely pinned in. So that's 120 wounds, which I assume some elements of that were on a pretty decent save. They wouldn't have had a chance to buff up though, right? So they'd just be on.
They wouldn't have had the lantern light yet, but if I'm not mistaken, I think they may have had the +1 because they haven't moved. But it did bring up 2 interesting points. Obviously, I've got 2 units of Untamed Beasts, and normally as we've talked about in the past, I'm using those to block up board space and give my crushers some room to work in.
Mm-hmm.
But this came up, obviously, his Stormkeep patrol. Let me get the exact wording. Why not? Let's go definitive. I do like going definitive.
There's two types of right. There's right and there's technically correct. And technically correct is the best type of correct.
Here we go. So the Stormkeep patrol, obviously, I think perhaps there's maybe a link to this list. I don't know if, because you talked about it on one of the list diaries.
Yeah, it's already on this one in my website, and you go back and listen to the Darren
So I won't
show.
on too much, but the core of it is the Stormkeep patrol, and they've got the Ever Vigilant ability, which is after armies are set up, but before the first battle round begins, you can remove the units from this battalion from the battlefield. So that is basically a Veritant, some Gryph-hounds, and his two big blocks of Liberators. They could similarly be Secretors, or they could be Judicators. Essentially, if you do so, you must set up the Lord Veritant from this battalion anywhere on the battlefield, more than 9 inches away from your enemy, and then set up all the other units from the battalion wholly within 12 of said hero. So behind that rather glorious Lustrian temple, there's a Veritant sat there, sort of in the upper part of the board. And then he's then got the 12-inch bubble to allow those two big units of libs to drop. Now, two things came up in the game. Basically, enforcing the hand, you can't start on your objectives generally, certainly not in the middle because of the way that it works. So he was just able to put 60 wounds on a 3-up save, re-rolling ones for the shields. He was able to put that on my home objective on turn 1, and that was because if two armies have got pre-game moves, as per the core rules, you have to roll off. So that first roll off was pretty key, because if I win the roll off, my beasts move 6 inches forward and everything's pushed back. But as it was, Adam won that roll off, and he was able to do that.
So I guess the question is like, I mean, it's set right up there for your whole army to charge into, but like, how did that? Because effectively, the win condition for that list is that you just pin your opponent in, so they could do nothing, and then like you just control the rest of the back of the board space and try and score points. Obviously, flying units could jump over the top. There's some good points to be had there, but again, like, can you actually fly over the top? Or can you like fly up to them and then turn after fly over the top? How did you manage to deal with it? Or did you manage to deal with it? Or like,
so the way it worked out is, spoilers, I lost by 2 points on turn 5.
Ooh, sad face.
But effectively, he held my 2 home objectives for the game, and I was then my fight was to try and take the other 4. So yeah, it was an interesting one, because normally you think to yourself, the one thing again that we failed to say is that this list has Gavriel Shoreheart in the list, or Gavriel Shore Charge, and it generally starts with 3 to 4, perhaps even 5 command points, because there's a mechanic whereby you can generate them. So what he generally would do is do what he's done that you can see on screen, and then take first turn, spend 3, 4, 5 command points, roll a 15 to 20-inch charge, and then hug and pin in all of your shit. But as a test, he gave me the first turn, and then Julie won the double. So,
I mean, because that's the other point about it as well. It's also a fairly low drop army ultimately. Like, there's also versions of it where it's 2 or 3. There's also there's I think it's a 2 drop. So it's very, very low ultimately, and like Marcus Rocket saying in the chat, like, I don't necessarily think it's an auto win list. I think it's a very likely to win most of the time list at the minute. But the real question is like what do we think of that as a game state? Like, that is just like Owen said there. If you're looking at the image, he's just pinned into the back of the board, and you got to ask yourself, like, can I play around that? Now, some armies that do have things that fly, but also it's a ton. Like, how did they survive? Like, did you just wipe a unit out, or like? I
thought to myself, I'll try and wipe one unit. So what I did was the unit of 6 Skull Crushers went first turn. I just buffed them up, and they went ham right into the middle unit. I basically ignored my top objective, tried to clear him from the middle, and then I always made the bottom one the primary, so he couldn't get 3 points for it, which worked out fine. But he's got so much CP to spend on battle shock immunity, and apart from impact hits, my stuff hits like a wet noodle. I do think that there are several armies with the output to deal with it. But it's the classic thing. It's almost a bit like the Sons of Behemat idea of, can you kill me fast enough? And in the meantime, I'm going to score your home shit and dance around with my other stuff. Because there's nothing else left. It's 60 libs, some heroes, some Griffhounds, and 10 Free Guild Guard. It is all in on those Liberators. But the point, and the reason why I took a screenshot, because it was like, okay, shit, I'm being given the turn here, and it already feels like Adam's had a turn, but he's got the chance to double me as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And also, I think one of the things to talk about, like a lot of people talking in the chat, like what will it be vulnerable to? So rend is like, you need very high rend, and even in situations where you have very high rend, let's think about something like a Stonehorn, which is like rend 2, damage 4, or even like the big mountain goat men. They're fair, like they could go through it, but you're still looking to do 60 wounds to each unit. So you're looking to do 120 wounds. So you can math that out yourself. Like Grimghast Reapers don't have the rend. I know they fly. That's not like that. That's not gonna do the job. Thinking about lists that we've seen recently, the one that we saw from the Everwinter event, the Scryer list, not the Scryer list, the Skaven list. So it had the 40 Plague Monks and the Acolytes. So the Acolytes could go in, but it's just very, very survivable. Do they start with the +1 save? I thought they had to sacrifice their move to get it. I don't know if that's the case, Owen. Like, maybe you do or don't know. I thought you did move in the move.
Probably if Adam's still in the chat, I don't know if he still is, but if Adam was in there, he could clarify. Let's have a quick look. Essentially, this is it. Shield of Civilization, +1 bravery. In addition, at the end of your movement phase, you can pick any friendly Liberator units that did not move and were not set up in that phase, and say they will stand fast, +1 to hit and +1 to save. Yeah,
so they weren't set up that phase.
In addition, at the end of your movement phase.
Yeah. So I don't think you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's normally motivated to take the turn and put the lantern on them and not make the move, and then they're on a 2-up save re-rolling ones. But yeah, I think, looking at the notes, there's obviously a couple people in the chat saying, teleport. He has got. It doesn't always have to be all 30 all in. 30 sending 30 forward and having another 30 to hold the back objectives and and zone off the rest of the board with the Griffhounds is viable as well.
That's why I like the list. That's why I like the list with the 12 hunters with the crossbows, because I just want to do like 35 wounds into your army turn 1 as well. And then
we've missed something massive, by the way, Rob.
Oh yeah, what is it, sir?
If you ever get the opportunity to kill that unit of 30, then he spends a command point, and on a 5-up, the whole unit comes back. Happy days.
There's also that. There's also, but only one chance nowadays. Only one chance. Also, sleeper tech there also is the Gav charge, like you were saying. You'd be amazed. So they're 9 away, but you could have like +12 to charge. So not +12, like +9 to charge, or it might be +12. So when you roll the 2d6, if you average 7, it can go 19 inches. Now that's not 19 inches with fly, but 19 inches is enough to sneak round units all across the board, which I think is important. Again, I don't think Owen or I are saying this is like, you will never beat this list.
Oh, no. It's just a conversation point, isn't it?
What we're saying is like, in tournament competitive play, especially with coverage happening this weekend, it's something you should look out for, and you need to ask yourself in this list, like, if this list occurs, because I'm pretty certain it's going to skate through FAQ, and I'm pretty certain like that. That's my opinion anyway, because I don't think there's enough people like voicing their discontent massively. So I think then. That means this might be something that you play next year. It's very cheap to build and put on the tabletop. It's not very expensive, and it'll be something to look out for, because people will build this sort of list. This was how Sylvaneth used to play. It reminds me of that. It reminds me of old Vanguard Wing, obviously old Change Host, and even like recent 2020 Change Host can play in a very similar-ish way. You could like use 2 Destiny dice, throw in some pink horrors that make you not able to retreat out of it. So like, this pin swamp list is what I've always called them, but the ability to pin back an army is a list you need to ask yourself, and that's why I liked about your pre-game move, Owen. But obviously it's both the pre-game move, so you've got to have that conversation, right?
Yeah, gotta have that conversation and then roll. And I haven't been winning many roll-offs recently, but that's another story. So it was just more par for the course. One cool thing, which was his big brain move, is that once he landed, he didn't need Gav. So he had Gavriel basically on my turn. I moved my Crushers to try and stop them being tagged. but he was then able to just put Gav in one corner and spend 1 CP to give him +3, and then he rolled a 10-inch charge and tagged the corner of my Blood Crushers again, which was highly annoying. So yeah, he was able to control them a little, which was frustrating. But yeah, we will see it. And I screenshotted this as we were playing, and then I saw it this morning and was like, oh, we could have a chat about that, because yeah, it's I think we will see it, because like you say, people have got the models, right? Maybe not 60, but people have got the models. And
also a big shout out to Xenothought as a business. And we're now into the deployment wars. We've had the activation wars, we've had the magic wars, and we're now into the pre-game move deployment wars.
Well, I would love to name check whoever said this, but it's stuck with me, and it's a really good thing to think of, which is that somebody said to me once that the deployment phase is deployment is your first movement phase.
Okay.
And when that deployment is like that, essentially, it's pretty bloody strong. But similarly, I should have maybe screened out better, and there's things to learn. So yeah, I think a little takeaway from that as well is that deployment is your first movement phase, which I really like that.
Okay, good points. Well, it's been a fun day. We went on for a while, but I'm okay with it as long as you are.
Yeah, man, I'm good. Yeah, I got nothing better to do, so that's fine.
Takeaways from today, though, obviously are big shout out to all the Aussies and the Kiwis for running events and being responsible and smart. Big love to all of you guys. Even though, I think that they're pretty good on local infections, I think I still saw masks in use at some events and stuff. So I think that's really positive. Well done. Big shout out again for Flesh Eater Court's win. And of course, if you are from somewhere around the world and you want to get in touch about what your local or what your country kind of meta, environment, gaming sort of situation is, we'd love to hear about it. Ultimately, I think it'd be really fun. And just tune in next week. Tune in next Monday. And also Sunday, of course, for Hammer Time 5. That's
6.
Right. 6. Shit. Hammer Time 6, live from my bedroom.
That's what it is every time for me, mate. Jesus. Right here.
My question is, you got any shout outs, Owen, before we go? I know you've got one.
I'm going to shout out, not a specific person, but if anybody hasn't watched it on Netflix, Anna and I watched the whole of Blood of Zeus. If anyone hasn't seen Blood of Zeus, if you're into fantasy, which you obviously are, they've got an amazing original anime series based on Greek mythology and stuff. So even for it's got me thinking about some color schemes and painting and stuff, because it's bad. Well, we were talking about it. You very much enjoyed it, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really good.
Shout out Netflix. Enjoyed that.
I was just quickly looking at what mine is. My shout out is for a TV show starring Ethan Hawke, our heartthrob from the 80s, in the TV show called The Good Lord Bird. Very good, very weird. Super into it. You guys should give it a check out. That's my shout out for today. And then obviously Owen is my other shout out. Big love to you. If you are watching live now, don't forget to join us tonight on the Age of Sigmar show. We'll be going through the narrative of the Marathi book and generally just talking Age of Sigmar. So that's going to be super fun. And thanks for joining us, you brilliant, wonderful people. Thanks to everyone that's watching on Patreon, and thank you to everyone on the podcast. Please stay hydrated. And still don't have a sign off 3 years later, Owen. One day I'll work it out. But goodbye.